The question was, how come the RSPCA don't promote veganism?
Well, I mean, quite bluntly, because they're not a vegan organisation and they don't hold vegan ethics. They're an animal welfare charity that exists to make sure that animals that are already within the exploitation system, whatever that is, are treated in a proper way, and to care for people's companion animals and free living beings that are injured by cars or traps or emergency relief, so to speak. They don't exist to promote veganism.
No, Ronnie, you'll know this, right? Is that the RSPCA in the early days never talked about.
No, they were really thought of as being a dog and cat organisation that kind of were concerned about the cruelty, so to speak, that occurred to dogs and cats. You've got the RSPCA, the central RSPCA, and then you've got a lot of RSPCA branches who are kind of pretty much like semi-independent from the RSPCA itself. All those branches, their concern almost exclusively is dogs and cats and also other animals.
Although I knew a branch in Liverpool that was run by vegans, so there you go.
There's one not too far away from me and Ronnie that's also run by vegans, but the problem is, when you look at kind of like the calls or the cases that they get handed to or get brought in by the members of the public, it's predominantly dogs and cats. And even when they want to apply some vegan ethics somewhere, they're so sort of inundated with all these other things that, well, what can they do? I mean, let's be honest. We're talking about a charity that already can't deal with the dogs and cats and other animal problem without factoring in farmed animals.
But that begs the question, why did they bother then with the farmed animal bit?
Because they get money for saying that it's okay and it makes the farms look good.
I don't think it's a lot of money. I mean, the way that I see it, and I think it's a really simple model for people to think about this issue, is that you've got three or four categories. The first one is traditional animal welfare. So that's where the RSPCA are, the same as the Humane Society of the United States. So these are the non-vegan cat and dog brigade, as we used to call them and everything, right? And so they don't pretend to be vegan. They don't stand for vegan. They don't aspire to be vegan. So that's traditional welfare. Then you got a category called new welfare or neo-welfare. Those are people like Peter who will use welfare language and welfare ideas in order to get to abolition. Or at least that's what they hope. They've got this kind of a bit of a kind of model that, welfare plus welfare plus welfare will eventually equal rights, right? So you've got those in the middle, the more radical, but still got a lot of welfare about them. And then you've got animal liberation and animal rights, which don't usually get involved with welfare at all. So the majority of the vegan movement are really in that scenario, that spectrum, are new welfareists. The majority language of the vegan movement is welfareist in nature. It's about cruelty and abuse and all the rest of it. The same language as the RSPCA, but vegans would say that they're completely different from the RSPCA, but they use the same language. It's the rights people and the liberationists who use the language of liberation and rights, and they don't tend to use welfare language. That's the spectrum that I kind of tend to use in order to understand a group like the RSPCA. And as you said, Andy, they're nothing to do with veganism, but they don't pretend to be either.
No, they never have.
No, they don't. And I think that what we're seeing, and what I find concerning, because I see it as a diversion really, is this kind of focus on the RSPCA, in particular by vegans, aimed at getting the RSPCA to drop their RSPCA assured label that they give to particular farms that they say have got higher welfare standards than other farms. For instance, Animal Rising have just announced that their next campaign is going to be against the RSPCA and to get them to drop that assured label. And I think their thinking is, well, by having these assured labels on animal products, that is kind of maybe giving people an excuse to continue consuming animal products. It kind of eases their conscience, perhaps, so to speak.
I totally agree. I think all of this is about consumer comfort at the end of the
Yes,
day.
that
That's what it's
yeah,
designed for. And
and
like,
so
so to go back, maybe it's not so much the money that the RSPCA get out of it, but they get to pass the buck, right? So it's no longer their responsibility. Like they only go and oversee this, and at the end of the day, there's only so much they can do. And it's kind of the same with what the vegans, and I mean, I hate to say it, but Joey is kind of leading the charge at the moment. That's what they're trying to do. They want to pass this book back to the RSPCA and try and hold them account for something that they've never claimed to do. And actually, if they genuinely care about welfare, then having the RSPCA remove all those stamps isn't going to benefit the animals in any way, shape, or form. All it will allow for a group, just for example, they could bring in Green Tractor, which is a farmers union run group, which basically, checks itself. And that's the new RSPCA. All the same kind of consumer comforts for the people that are buying the flesh. But in terms of the actual welfare for the animals, it would probably get far worse.
Do you think the argument of the people who are having a go at the RSPCA that if without the assured labels, people will consider a plant-based diet? Do you think that's a non-starter?
No, I don't think that's the case at all.
I think that they're thinking, well, people are using this RSPCA assured thing as an excuse to continue as a sort of salve to their conscience, so that they can continue consuming animal products.
And therefore they will stop
true.
consuming. But is that right though?
I think in most cases that wouldn't be the case. I think.
I mean, let's look at it this way.
Yeah.
How long would it take, just hypothetically, if we had like some sort of magic alien ray gun now that we sprayed out and it removed every RSPCA assured label, sticker, piece of memorabilia from existence? How long would it even take the general public to notice?
Well, it would take a while for them to notice, but also what?
Yeah, right. So there's the first problem. They don't care enough to even pay attention to the fact that the labels already exist.
That can't be right, because the argument is that people actually seek out the things with the RSPCA. I mean, that's what Ronnie's kind of alluding to.
I mean, they might have done once upon a time, but I think when most people go shopping, they buy the same things that they usually buy. And so, like, as we just said, if you zapped all those labels off, most people would take weeks or months to even notice that sticker wasn't there anymore, because they're just so accustomed to those things. But also, we've also got to factor in, like, if you went to somewhere like Tesco or Sainsbury's, they've got their own versions of this high welfare nonsense, which have got nothing to do with the RSPCA.
Georgie is saying, I definitely heard flesh consumers say they specifically buy RSPCA assured products.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the same as the people that come in here and say, well, I'm against factory farming, so I get all of my eggs from my uncle down the road.
But I think the big question is, if those people in their head saying, I'm going to buy beef and I'm going to try to buy my beef from an RSPCA assured source. If that's their mental approach, then if there's no RSPCA assured source, they're still going to buy the beef, aren't they? If you see what I mean, they'll say, well, look, I'm going to try and get it from, a higher welfare source. Doing my bit, I'm going to try and do it. But say that higher welfare source isn't there, that doesn't mean that they are then going to not buy beef at all. If you see what I mean. If
absolutely. And you could test that in various other methods. With just say you had like a snack van that was famous for this particular product and people sat in the queue all day, and when they got there it had run out. They're not just going to walk away. They're still going to buy something. That's what the data tells us. So it's the same with these people. If, for example, they go to Tesco and they actually haven't got, I don't know, this particular slice with an RSPCA sticker, they're just going to buy the one that's the similar price. They're not going to care. They're not going to go, forget it then, I'll go home. No one's doing that.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that there's so many problems with it. There's so much doubt as to whether these campaigns towards the RSPCA are going to actually make any difference at all. There's so much doubt surrounding that, isn't there? That surely the better use of the energy of all those vegans that are involved in those campaigns is to go and educate other people to become vegan.